but the fact that Toji absolutely low diffs this guy is very impressive. Hey, what's up everybody? It's LeeLos, and today we're talking about why Yuji versus Toji is obvious. Stay steady in pursuit of your dreams and goals. You're born to win, you're made for greatness, and I definitely believe in you guys. Keep up the great work each and every day. So, Yuji versus Toji is a battle between the main protagonist of Jujutsu Kaisen versus one of the most popular characters in the entire series. Today we're going to analyze every single power-up and ability these two characters display to figure out overall who's more powerful than who between these two characters. Toji, from the moment we see him fight, displays a list of impressive feats. He moves so fast that an exhausted, pre-awakened teen Gojo is impressed by his speed. Toji himself doesn't have cursed energy, which made it harder for Gojo to track him, but it's still an impressive feat on its own. Then goes on to absolutely low diff Geto, someone who's stated to be a special grade sorcerer a year later, and special grade sorcerers are stated to be strong enough to take on a nation. It's debatable on whether or not Geto was already a special grade when Toji fought him, but the fact that Toji absolutely low diffs this guy is very impressive. In addition to displaying insane battle intelligence and fighting experience, Toji also has a cursed spirit where he can store multiple cursed tools. We saw him use at least 2 different swords, one of which being the inverted spear of heaven, a special grade cursed tool that negates curse techniques. This is the sword that he used to bypass Gojo's infinity. His durability is also insane, as he was strong enough to be hit by teen Gojo's red and still survive. And not only survive, but continue fighting. He didn't even break any bones from the attack. In the anime, we see that Toji reacts to and blocks this attack, but in the manga, that's never shown. There's a real possibility he just got hit square in the chest with this attack and then brushed it off. We don't even know the limit of everything that Toji has stored within the cursed spirit. You could argue that he only used the equipment that he needed specifically to fight Gojo and Geto. There's a possibility he might have a list of other equipment designed to handle different types of opponents. Despite this, in this backstory, he displayed both close and long-range attacks from different tools that he had stored. These battles show us how powerful having a plan, prep time, and battle experience can truly be in this verse. Later down the timeline, he also low diffs the disaster curse Dagon while taking 0 notable damage. Even though these feats from Toji are insane, to get a better understanding on Toji's abilities, we can scale him to Maki. The lowball interpretation of Toji would be to say that he's slightly weaker than Shinjuku Maki. The highball interpretation would be that he's stronger than her, and the medium ball interpretation would be that he's about relative to, if not exactly equal to Maki during the Shinjuku battle. The controversy around Toji's strength comes from the limitations of heavenly restrictions. Mekamaru states that heavenly restrictions are somewhat similar to binding vows, but instead of being a pact that someone makes with themselves, it's a pact that a person is born with. Maki's heavenly restriction, like Toji's, made it so she has no cursed energy at all. In exchange, she was given great strength. But Maki's heavenly restriction was limited due to her being a twin. According to Mai, curse techniques treat twins as one individual. So essentially, Maki's heavenly restriction was limited as long as Mai was alive. Once Mai died, Maki gained so much power that she immediately reminds Ogi of Toji. After several battles and going through a mental awakening, the narrator states, a fighter equal to Toji has now become fully realized. There's a few different interpretations of this scene, and it leads to the debate on whether or not heavenly restriction users can actually get stronger once they've become fully realized. One interpretation is that this means Maki's heavenly restriction is now fully realized, meaning her stats cannot get physically stronger or faster from this point onwards. She's just reached the limit of what the heavenly restriction can do for her. This is debatable, so let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think that heavenly restriction users can actually increase in strength and speed after their heavenly restrictions become fully realized? Even if a heavenly restriction user can't get stronger after becoming fully realized, you can make a good argument argument that they can continue improving in skill, because there's a few things throughout the series that imply this. When Toji's first attack doesn't kill Gojo, Toji states he might be getting rusty. This implies that there's some kind of variation possible with Heavenly Restriction skill. At the start of the series, Megumi states that out of all of the students here, nobody was a better cursed tool user than Maki. If this statement includes Todo, then this implies that despite being weaker than Todo, Maki would simply be more skilled at wielding cursed tools. Gojo also states that about 80% of a sorcerer's power comes from raw talent that they're born with, and the other 20% includes things like Shikigami and barriers, but it's possible that there are other factors in the 20%, such as battle experience and skill. You could argue that even if Toji and Maki were exactly equal in stats, Toji would be a better fighter due to simply being more skilled and having more battle experience. Maki versus Toji is a full debate on its own, but for simplicity in this video, I'll be using the middle ball interpretation that Toji is just all around relative to, if not exactly equal to Maki. But at the end of the video, I'll include the low ball and high ball interpretations as well to see if anything changes. Maki displays insane feats during the Shinjuku battle, but her durability is something that's massively underrated. Unlike all of the other heavy hitter characters, Maki does not have reverse curse technique, so all of the damage she takes, she just has to withstand that and continue fighting. Against Sukuna, she takes one black flash, is able to continue fighting, takes cleave, is still able to continue fighting, then takes a second black flash and dismantle slashes that Maki states have an increased output and is still standing afterwards. That's absolutely insane, especially when you compare it to Yuji. Yuji, every time he was hit by cleave, it was considered a fatal attack. It literally one-shot him. Yuji has dialogue where he says he took 4 fatal injuries that would have killed him without reverse curse technique, and some of these injuries were from cleave, meaning Maki was able to take an attack that one-shot Yuji to the point where he was going to die without reverse curse technique and just continued fighting afterwards. That alone shows you that Maki, and by extension Toji, have more raw durability than Yuji does. Attacks that can one-shot kill Yuji if he doesn't use reverse curse technique, Toji can just take that to the chest and keep fighting. All that being said, let's scale Yuji and see how he compares to this monster of a character. Yuji's most impressive feat is the simple fact that he fights Sukuna longer than everyone else in the Shinjuku battle, excluding Gojo. This implies that his durability is absolutely insane, but it should be noted Yuji does have reverse curse technique, so he was able to heal himself from attacks that were going to kill him multiple times over. Despite this, the feats Yuji performs are extremely impressive. If you're lowballing Yuji, you could use this statement from Kenjaku in which he is speaking about the sorcerer's heavy hitters, and we get a panel showing Maki, Yuta, and Hikari. We don't see Yuji in this page. Based on that statement alone, you could make an argument that Yuji, at least at the start of the Shinjuku battle, was not as strong as Maki, Hikari, and Yuta. Some counter arguments to this is that maybe this is just Kenjaku's perspective. He has no idea how much stronger Yuji's become during the 1 month of training. Another counter argument is maybe this is Gege's perspective, the actual author of the story, and he's showing us that he doesn't think Yuji is on the level of Yuta, Hikari, and Maki. Something else to consider though is that Kashimo's not included in this picture either, so it opens up some interesting Maki versus Kashimo debates. It should also be noted that Yuji by the end of this battle is considerably stronger than he was at the start. After hitting Sukuna with about 7 black flashes back to back, Yuji awakens Shrine. This shrine has a lower output than Sukuna's curse technique. Sukuna states that because Yuji just awakened Shrine, his output with the technique was low, and his punching accuracy was actually more dangerous. Also, every time we see Yuji use Shrine, he has to physically place his hand on whatever he's cutting before he can cut it, meaning Yuji might not have long-range dismantles yet outside of when he's using his domain, but Toji doesn't have any cursed energy, so he can't be recognized by a domain's sure hit techniques anyway. Yuji also uses this technique to cut the barrier between Sukuna and Megami's soul directly, and this creates another debate on, can Yuji just do soul damage to anybody with his curse technique, or can he only do this to incarnated sorcerers that have two souls within one body? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. It should be noted that from the very beginning of the series, Yuji could already intuitively sense the contour of the soul when he fought Mahito. That's what made him Mahito's natural enemy. But when we see Yuji fight Chozo, there's no mention at all throughout that entire fight that Yuji's doing soul damage to Chozo, even though Yuji can intuitively see the contour of the soul. When Yuji fought Todo, there was also no mention of him doing soul damage to Todo. Also, when Maki uses the soul-splitting katana against Sukuna, Sukuna states that that wound took longer to heal than the others. That's because the soul-splitting katana did actual damage directly to his soul. Considering that Yuji had already hit Sukuna multiple times, if Yuji was really doing direct soul damage, I think the dialogue would have been something like, the soul-splitting katana, it's exactly like Yuji's punches. So all that being said, I think it's a debatable thing on whether or not Yuji's really doing soul damage, or if he can only target the barrier between souls of incarnated sorcerers. If you highball Yuji, then that would mean every attack he does when he's using his curse technique would be doing soul damage. It would basically be like Yuji has a soul-splitting katana, but every time he lands hands on somebody, he can hit them with a soul-splitting katana attack purely to their soul. So I'll save that at the end as a highball interpretation of Yuji, and for this video, I'll use a more medium ball interpretation and say that he can only split people's souls if they're incarnated sorcerers. Yuji also has blood manipulation in Supernova, and he has simple domain, something that boosted his durability to a point that he was able to survive Sukuna's incomplete domain for 90 seconds. But it should be noted that at the very last moment of the domain, he was pretty much torn to pieces and then just healed himself with reverse curse technique. One interpretation is maybe Yuji was just standing in a pocket of the domain where he wasn't being hit at all, and then the last few seconds were the only seconds the domain actually made contact with him, and it just immediately tore his simple domain to shreds. Or another interpretation would be that Yuji was actually blocking the domain for the majority of the 90 seconds, but then the last few seconds of the domain, it broke through his simple domain, and that's why he took damage. Let me know which interpretation you guys believe is more likely. Either way, Yuji surviving the incomplete domain for 90 seconds is very impressive. We see characters like Kusakabe use simple domain to survive a point-blank Uzumaki from Kenjaku. I'm not saying that Yuji's simple domain scales exactly to Kusakabe's simple domain because Kusakabe is kind of different, but just having this ability, it's very helpful in a fight. The nature of Yuji's black flash amps are worth mentioning as well. You could make an argument that for the entire final duration of the fight, all of the crazy feats that Yuji performs are due to him being massively amped due to hitting multiple black flashes back to back. Black flashes are stated to make it so that the user can manipulate cursed energy as easily as breathing. The sorcerer essentially enters into the zone, but there's a debate over how much it actually increases your power. There's statements throughout the series of people performing at 120% after hitting black flashes, but when you're Yuji and you hit like 10 black flashes back to back, is he going way beyond 120%? Does it just continue stacking and go even beyond that? That's a debatable question on its own as well. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think Yuji at the end of the fight was going way beyond 120%? Do you think he was potentially reaching like 200% of his normal potential when he was in this final battle due to hitting just an actually insane record-breaking amount of black flashes? Another thing to consider is that Yuji's attacks to Sukuna were unique because every time Yuji hit Sukuna, he was lowering Sukuna's cursed energy output as well. So as Yuji's getting stronger and stronger, this massively nerfed Sukuna is getting weaker and weaker as well. So Yuji's feats are very impressive, but we really should keep in mind that Yuji's massively amped while Sukuna's massively nerfed. So much so that even Todo is fighting side by side with Yuji, landing some attacks on Sukuna. Finally, it should be noted that even before Yuji hits any black flashes at all in this fight, he was still strong and fast enough to keep up with and do combo attacks with Yuta while Yuta was in his domain being buffed by the domain. Gojo states that domains buff your stats, so the fact that Yuji at the start of the Shinjuku battle is able to keep up and do combo attacks with a buffed Yuta is actually insane. All that being said, who would be more likely to win between Yuji and Toji? The reality is this battle would be an extreme difficulty fight, and there's many different possible outcomes. We'll get the simple outcomes out of the way first and then move towards the more complex ones. If Toji goes into this fight with prep time, he's winning almost 100% guaranteed. He simply has too much battle experience and too much fighting intelligence and is overall just too strong with these advantages to lose a fight against Yuji. The fact that he was able to put a plan together to defeat a teen Gojo means it's almost guaranteed he'd be able to put a plan together to defeat Yuji, someone who's relative to him and honestly probably not as smart as he is. And to clarify, we're talking about Yuji who has Shrine. At the end of the Shinjuku battle, assume he's at full power and hasn't hit any black flashes yet. That's the Yuji we're talking about here. Now, if these two are just fighting, the simple answer is this. At the start of the fight, Toji would be more likely to win, but as the battle drags on, Yuji would be more likely to win, because Yuji has reverse curse technique and a high chance of hitting black flashes, meaning as the fight goes on, Yuji can heal himself and get stronger from hitting black flashes. Meanwhile, Toji has really no method of getting stronger. He's just taking more and more damage as the fight goes on. I'd argue that in overall stats, including battle intelligence, Toji is slightly superior, which would give him the advantage at the start of the fight, but as the fight drags on and Yuji lands black flashes, Yuji will be getting stronger and he can heal himself to stay in the fight for a longer time period, while Toji is just taking more damage and getting weaker. Now, the most complex question is overall, who is simply more likely to win? If Yuji and Toji are fighting unarmed, just pure hand-to-hand, then I'd say Yuji is more likely to win. Toji killing Yuji right away without any of his weapons is unlikely because they're relative in overall stats and Yuji can heal himself. Even if Toji is slightly superior in durability, the fact that Yuji can heal himself while Toji can't is a big advantage for Yuji, and Yuji hitting black flashes, getting stronger as the fight goes on, the odds would just be slightly more in Yuji's favor. But if Toji also has his curse spirit containing multiple curse tools, then I'd say overall Toji would have a slightly greater chance of winning this battle. Keep in mind, no matter which way the fight turns out, this is going to be an extreme difficulty fight, but I'd lean more towards Toji being slightly more likely to win against Yuji when you factor in everything that he has within his curse spirit. Something I didn't mention earlier on is that Toji stored countless flyhead curse spirits within his own curse spirit. Using the flyheads as a distraction would further tilt the odds of victory in Toji's favor. Who knows what else he has stored in there, to be completely honest. Maybe he has other curse spirits in there that he could use as well. He might even have tools specifically designed for fighting somebody like Yuji. But another thing I never spoke about is that with the heavenly restriction that Maki displayed, she has a form of precognition where she's able to sense the change in the environment around her and predict what people are about to do in their attacks. Toji has this same ability, and Maki uses this to dodge attacks from cursed Naoya, someone who debatably may have been even faster than she was. So if Toji and Yuji are relative in overall stats, and Toji can use precognition to dodge attacks from someone who might even be faster than he is, then you could make an argument that Yuji literally might not be able to hit this guy. Just due to the precognition of heavenly restriction and them being relative fighters, Toji might just weave everything Yuji throws. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, to be honest. I think the more likely interpretation is that it would just give him an advantage in overall hand-to-hand combat, and he might evade a lot of attacks, but I do think Yuji would land damage on Toji. As I said before, I think this fight ends extreme difficulty. Also, Toji's raw strength isn't really a factor because he has soul-splitting katana. It ignores durability and does soul damage directly. So we saw that Sukuna was able to heal soul damage with reverse curse technique because he understands the boundary of souls. So in theory, Yuji should be able to do the same thing. It just takes longer to heal from that than a normal attack would. But overall, I lean towards Toji simply being slightly more likely to win against Yuji. And Yuji's domain wouldn't even work on Toji anyway because Toji doesn't have cursed energy. Toji is just simply a smarter, more experienced fighter than Yuji is. Precognition is a big advantage. The unknowns of everything within the cursed spirit is also a good advantage, and Yuji does not start the fight as strong as he was after multiple Black Flash amps. He has to build up to that level of power by hitting Black Flashes. Something to consider, what happens if Yuji hits 0 Black Flashes in their fight? In that case, I'm saying that Toji wins almost guaranteed. That seems pretty much impossible because Yuji hits Black Flashes like all the time, but when he fought Chozo, he didn't hit any Black Flashes. So it is a possibility that he can fight people without them happening. So now let's talk about the highball version of Yuji versus Toji. The highball version of Yuji versus Toji is that Toji is stronger than Maki, and Yuji, if he touches you one time, he's basically like damaging your soul. In this case, Yuji wins for sure. He might be able to one-shot Toji if you use this interpretation of Yuji. He might be able to just hit him with one shrine attack and just kill him. Or just damage his soul so much that he's nerfed and then he just defeats him with his next attack afterwards. If we use that interpretation of Yuji, that all of his shrine attacks do soul damage, then Yuji's almost guaranteed to win. He only needs to land a couple of attacks and he wins the fight. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. The medium ball interpretation of both characters, Toji would be slightly more likely to win extreme difficulty. If the fight drags on really long though, Yuji becomes slightly more likely to win in that scenario. However, overall, I just say that it's slightly more likely overall that in most encounters between these two characters, unplanned, Toji would be slightly more likely to be victorious in a straight up fight, as long as Toji has his cursed spirit with him. Without the cursed spirit, Yuji would be more likely to win. And if you give them prep time, Toji is always more likely to win. And finally, with the highball interpretations of both characters, Yuji would pretty much always win that. He only needs to land a couple attacks and then the victory's his. So yeah, that's everything I wanted to say. Let me know what you guys think about this. Let me know what you think about the points that I said throughout this video. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate the views and the comments. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.